how does ultra-processed foods, eating them on a regular basis, how does that impact our health over time?
High consumption of ultra-processed foods is actually linked to 32 different health conditions, including obviously obesity, diabetes, but less thought of might be mood and attention deficit disorders, gut disruptions. There's quite a lot that can be impacted by eating ultra-processed foods on a regular basis. And it can be really hard to avoid because over 73% of the items in a supermarket are ultra-processed.
Wow.
Hi, I'm Lennis Woods Mullins, and I love to help women to vibe, to be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. So come on, let's vibe.
You hear so much these days about all the things you shouldn't eat. Every once in a while about the things that you should, and then you find out later on from another source that maybe you shouldn't eat that either. So it gets to be very confusing. And so today I thought it would be such a great idea to have with us Julie Ruelle, who is a nutritionist, and she happens to work for a company that helps people track their foods, especially if you happen to have diabetes. And she's here today to talk in particular about the kinds of things we need to be looking for, especially in midlife, when it comes to the foods that we should and should not eat. And maybe we can even dispel a few myths. If you look in the show page there, you can have a direct link to the website of the company that she works for, Go Coco, which is an app that helps you to track your foods. And I don't know if I said that, Go Coco, but did I say it right? Okay, Julie,
Yep.
Welcome to the V.I.B.E Living Podcast. It's wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you. Yes, it's great to be here. I'm happy to try to dispel all the myths and answer all the questions that I can and get all of us on track for better eating.
Okay, first of all, let's talk about what is ultra-processed food. What's your definition of that?
It's a great question because ultra processed is not the same thing as processed. And I think ultra processed is a newer term. So taking a few minutes to define really what it is a great starting point. So processing can actually be beneficial. Processing is things like freezing vegetables so that we can, as a society, eat vegetables all year round instead of only when they're in season. It's things like making milk into yogurt. It's grinding flour or grinding grains into flours so that we can make breads and other foods from them. That inherently is not bad. That's not something that we have to avoid. That actually has a lot of benefits. But when something becomes ultra processed, we're adding a lot of ingredients to those foods that do not benefit our health at all, and in many cases are detrimental to our health. And those are things like food dyes, colorings, additives, chemicals. Those are getting added to our food supply in greater and greater quantities. And we didn't really have those 50, 60 years ago. So sometimes they say it's things maybe your grandparents wouldn't recognize as food, things you wouldn't have in your home kitchen. Those are the types of things that we're talking about when we're talking about ultra processed foods.
Okay, that makes sense. It's interesting because I have this one pet peeve about when I see, say, some cookies, and it'll say organic cookies. And I'm like, okay, what field or tree did they pick those cookies from? It could be that the ingredients they're using are organic, but the cookie itself is not. So there's a lot that goes on with the wording in the retailing and marketing or the marketing and retailing of foods these days, especially if they're in a package in a box or that kind of thing. What kinds of things do we need to be looking out for when it comes to what's on the package, the labeling and all that information that they give us on the outside of the package?
Yes, and I think probably a lot of people would like to see a cookie tree, to your point, but and also that's something that is a huge pet peeve of mine is how sneaky the food industry is with their marketing. The word healthy, for example, you can slap it on anything you want. There's really no regulation for that. So that's something that I really like to make people aware of. The way things are named, they put good in the titles of products, healthy in the titles of products, and what are we pointing to say that these things are actually good or healthy? So things we want to be on the lookout for a really long ingredient list. If you see ingredients and it's half the side of the package and it's a lot of words you can't pronounce, really good chances that those things are ultra processed ingredients and things that we want to try to steer clear of most of the time. Added sugars, artificial sugars, the food dyes, additives, colorings, those are things that I really try to help people to limit, or at least if we're not going to avoid them, we're at least limiting them.
I agree. It's so funny when you talk about that because there's this whole thing about vegan. That's another pet peeve of mine. Not that vegan is bad necessarily, although if you're going to be vegan, you have to educate yourself in terms of what that really means. Consult a nutritionist to make sure you're getting a complete protein and you're getting all the amino acids and everything that you need, because most lay people don't have that knowledge automatically. But aside from all of that, to give you an idea of how confusing the word vegan can be, an Oreo cookie is vegan. Okay. So you just have to do your homework or consult people like Julie to make sure that, what you think you're eating is actually what you're eating. But getting back to the ultra processed food, how does ultra processed foods, eating them on a regular basis, how does that impact our health over time?
High consumption of ultra processed foods is actually linked to 32 different health conditions, including obviously obesity, diabetes, but less thought of might be like mood and attention deficit disorders, gut disruptions. There's quite a lot that can be impacted by eating ultra processed foods on a regular basis. And it can be really hard to avoid because over 73% of the items in a supermarket are ultra processed.
Wow. Which explains the reason why a lot of times my cabinets are empty because I don't buy a lot of things in a box or in a package. I'm not perfect. I'm an 80-20 girl. 80% of the time I'm good. But the other 20%, maybe not so much. And when it comes to that, how hypervigilant should we be when it comes to ultra processed foods? What kind of a Geiger counter should we be looking at in terms of how much we should eat versus how much we shouldn't eat?
Yeah, I agree with you. We're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming for improving. So I really like to focus on that with people. If you're eating 100% of your diet right now is fast food, ultra processed food, let's find a meal that we can start with. Let's find somewhere we can make the biggest change. What can we have the biggest impact with right away? So I work with somebody and they're going through the drive-through every morning because they have a really busy morning dropping off the kids and going to work. How can we plan ahead and get them to meal prep maybe some healthy, tasty things that they can bring with them to work so that they're not stopping at that drive-through? Let's start there and then let's build on that. So I agree. We're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming to improve, and really trying to eat more real whole foods is a great starting point. So any meal or snack that you're having that comes out of a package or a wrapper, is there something we could get that's a much more natural substitute for that? So are you eating like a bar that's made out of fruit? Can we just eat the fruit? Skip the processing factor of it and go to the more natural source. So looking for easier swaps that we can do along the way is the place that I like to start.
That's great. I love telling my clients that I'm not here to necessarily take away all the things that you're eating. I'm here to add healthy things to them. And what I have found is that as people add more healthy things to their diet, they begin to not want or crave the other unhealthy things. There's like a disconnect there, and they just stop eating it after a while. And let's talk about that a little bit because there's lots and lots of cravings that we have. And where does the ultra processed food and cravings, how does that all interrelate?
Yeah, they're designed to make us want more of them, essentially. They are engineered that way. So you're up against a pretty difficult track with years and years of lots of money from the food industries figuring out how to make those foods addictive. So they have the right quantities of sugar and fat that make them addictive. They have simple carbohydrates that are causing our blood sugar to go up when we eat them, which makes us have more energy and feel good momentarily. And then our body has to send out the insulin to lower the blood sugar. And then we have a crash and you're like, oh, I felt better when I had more of that sugar, more sugar. So it causes like a roller coaster throughout the day. And then in addition to that, the dyes and chemicals and things that are being added to this food, they're disrupting our gut microbiota, they're disrupting our hormone balance. So that's leading to a lot of cravings and triggers and things as well.
I'm so glad you mentioned the gut microbiome because we hear a lot of people now talking about the gut. It's so interesting to me. I've been doing this for 18 years. It's so interesting to me, the trends, how things like trend. And right now, gut health is trending. But I sometimes wonder, do people really understand what that is? Because gut health is more than just the idea of the fact that you have a bloated gut and you're trying to get it down. There's some people who have gut health problems where they don't have an extended gut, but they still have the gut health problems. So can you tell us a little bit about gut health, what it is, and the things we need to be thinking about to correct it?
Yeah, our gut is considered our second brain of the body. And recently I've been reading some research that thinks maybe it's even the first brain of our body. So our gut is hugely important. It's communicating with our brain nonstop, sending signals back and forth. And those ultra processed ingredients that aren't supposed to be in there disrupt that communication between the brain and the gut. So that certainly can lead to a whole host of issues there. And then also, having a healthy gut helps us better absorb vitamins and minerals. So we're getting more out of the foods that we are eating. It helps us to feel better, to have regular movements through our GI tract. And we have billions and billions of bacteria in our gut, and it's like a battle between the good and the bad bacteria. So we want to feed the good guys and we want to starve out the bad guys. Some of those bad guys thrive on sugar. A lot of the good guys thrive on different types of fiber. So consuming more whole foods is going to accomplish both of those goals. So there's a lot that goes into maintaining a healthy gut, but whole unprocessed foods is really good gut fuel.
Absolutely. And you're right about that whole brain thing. A lot of people may not realize that there are actual neuroreceptors in the gut. Our happy hormones are grounded in the gut. Also, from a hormonal perspective, and this is what's mostly important, I think, to midlife women, is that you want to keep a healthy gut to help balance your hormones. And one clear thing that compromises your gut health is when you have elevated cortisol levels in your in your system, and of course that leads to inflammation. It's all interrelated, but it does start with, quite frankly, what it is you put in your mouth, and also your lifestyle in terms of the kinds of ways you encode stress and deal with stress. And one thing that would probably fall into your realm a little bit is the whole idea of emotional eating and what drives all of that, because sometimes the emotional eating is what introduces all this bad stuff to your gut. I have to share a story with you. I have a granddaughter who's 9 years old, and she was here visiting me for the summer. So, of course, I bought all her favorite things, and I was the 20% girl at that time. And one of the things that has not even seen the inside of my cabinet in 24 years, because the girls have been gone for a good 12 years, and I stopped feeding them stuff when they were growing up, was Captain Crunch. Okay, that's her favorite thing. Now, I know that actually, I feel like if you open a box of Captain Crunch, if those ingredients were alive, there'd be all kinds of live stuff in there, okay? Because it's all stuff that's not good for you. But anyway, I ate a bowl with her. Oh my God. I ate 4 bowls. And then I realized, what am I doing? It was like I couldn't help myself. And I hadn't had Captain Crunch in years, more than 24 years, 30, 40 years. It's been years, okay? But that made me realize how quickly it can compromise your behavior. And then, of course, I had a whole week's worth of gut issues as a result of that. But the good news is that you can reverse the health of your gut within 14 days if you know what to do. But I told that story so that you can maybe help our midlife women who are listening to this podcast, what kinds of things they can do to help improve their gut health and to help them stave off the stuff that is going to compromise their gut health and inevitably their hormone balancing.
Yeah, I think something that you said earlier is something that really resonates with me and that I like to focus on as well is I don't always want to talk about what we can't have, what we can't have. Let's talk about what we can have, what we can add in that can be beneficial. And I think that question leads perfectly to that answer. So good bacteria for the gut in things like yogurt, kefir, fermented foods. Those are really good things to add into our diet because those are going to help repopulate the gut with good bacteria. We also need to feed the gut with the good bacteria. and that's prebiotics. And those come from fiber-rich foods and eating a diverse variety of fiber-rich foods. So whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and probiotic-rich foods. Those two things are going to help you to repopulate your gut and then feed the repopulating you're doing. So keep it going, keep those good bacteria alive. And then also, if we want to starve out the bad stuff, getting rid of the disruptors, like the ultra-processed markers, like the extra added sugars, that's going to help us rebalance. And that leads to better hormonal control, it affects our mood, it affects everything because, like we said, our gut and our brain is so connected.
Yeah, it really does. And that's interesting because you do actually have that connection between the foods that we eat and our hormones, the foods that we eat and our overall health. But there's this other thing about the foods that we eat and chronic disease. Tell us a little bit about what the connection is between the ultra processed foods and diabetes.
Yeah. So a very recent study in the Lancet journal that came out showed that a 10% increase in ultra processed food consumption actually leads to a 17% increase in type 2 diabetes. So there's so many things that people living with diabetes are paying attention to already. They're watching their sugar, their carbohydrates. They really should be trying to balance carbohydrate foods with protein foods or fat foods so that we're digesting more slowly. And now we're adding another thing in here that ultra processed foods are increasing our risk for type 2 diabetes. So that's another thing we need to be on the lookout for. But luckily, they all go hand in hand. If we are decreasing our refined sugars, if we're decreasing our added sugars, if we're increasing our proteins and our fats in a way that will also naturally help us decrease our consumption of ultra processed foods.
I agree with you. It's interesting because I was just thinking as you were saying that when I went through my whole little Captain Crunch craze, Captain Crunch craze, yeah, that's what it was, the 3 C's. I immediately did the probiotic, prebiotic thing, and I did the fermented thing. And like I said, within 14 days, I was much better. But one of the things that was really interesting was how it impacted my energy level. Once I did crash from those 4 balls or whatever, and it was that much harder for me to get myself energized again because of all the additives and preservatives and gunks. I don't know what was wrong with me when I introduced that to my body. So it's really very important. So given that, what are a few simple and realistic ways that we can start eating better, like right now today?
Right now today. So I love right now today, by the way. We happen to be talking on a Friday. Let's not wait till Monday. Let's do it today.
Right. It's not procrastinating.
Yes, I completely agree with you. There are some really easy swaps that we can make. And like I said, I'd like to figure out take a look at somebody's whole diet, and you can do this for yourself. You can look at your whole day and you can say, all right, where's one place that I could make a swap? Are you having a really sugary beverage at some point during the day? Is it like a big coffee from a chain that puts lots of flavorings and whipped creams and things in there? Okay, that's 400 calories and it's upwards of 60 grams of sugar. Can we start there? Can we find some coffee that you like to make at home? And we can find ways to flavor it. We could use vanilla. We could use cinnamon. We can find ways to still make it exciting and something that you enjoy, but with just way less of those processed ingredients and sugar and calories. Do you skip a meal? Can we find a way that you can start eating something during that time where you're skipping your meal? Because again, adding things in sometimes is just as good as taking things out. Can you start looking at labels and choosing between the best options in the cracker aisle or the cereal aisle and saying, I'm going to have cereal. It's going to happen. So I'm going to make a good cereal choice for me. So looking at the ingredients in the cereal, we want to look for the fewest ingredients as possible, like 100% a whole grain and no added sugars. And then maybe you add your own fruits and your own nuts to it, and you make a much healthier cereal than you could buy from the store. So there's a lot of small places that we can start with today that really add up to big impact on our overall health.
And there's different kinds of tools that can help you do that, help you figure out what to eat if you're looking at which foods are more nutrient dense than the other. And I know your app helps people to do that. But there's something else that we are definitely on the same page on, and that is calories. Why is it that calorie counting, why isn't calorie counting the answer? And what should we be focusing on instead?
Yeah, calories, in a way, calories matter, but there's so much more that goes into it than just that. It's quality as well. So, are we putting things in our body? Are the calories we're putting in our body fueling our body, or are they detrimental to our body? So, again, 80-20, something along that way. We want to put in more calories that are fueling us than are not. So the foods we eat do so much more than just equal a calorie. So the foods we eat help fuel our brain, they help fuel our muscles, they help fuel our energy levels. And when we have more energy, we're able to move more, which is also really important for overall wellness. So there's so much more that goes into it than just calories in, calories out.
Absolutely. And I have to say also for midlife women, calorie counting can be a really dangerous thing. The first thing is, for instance, an avocado is a good example. Avocados, the average one is anywhere from 150 to 300 calories, depending on the size, okay? And somebody might say, oh my God, that's so much. But it's nutrient dense. I think every single woman, if you like avocados, should be eating one avocado a day because of the fiber that's there and the omega-3 that's there and all the good stuff that really does help ultimately balance our hormones, helps us in terms of not gaining extra weight, that's unwanted weight because of the high fiber that's there. But yes, it is 300 calories. So sometimes the whole calorie counting thing could be somewhat of a misnomer. And also the pounds thing too, for women over 40, the pound thing can sometimes be tricky because of the water gain that goes back and forth. And also, quite frankly, I have worked with women who wanted to lose some pounds. And first of all, I don't like to use the word lose. I like to say release, because if you release them, hopefully you'll never find it again. If you lose it, you're going to find it again. It's just a mindset thing. But I've had people that I've worked with who've lost 10 inches, but they only lost about 6 or 7 pounds. So you really have to take a look at the words and what they really mean versus what your goals are. If you look great, but you've only lost 5 pounds and 7 inches, which one is the most important? So I just wanted to just put that in there, that in midlife in particular, the things that we used to watch when we were in our 20s and 30s begin to change as we get older. And I like to look at grams. In fact, let me ask you this, because there's an ongoing conversation about protein. What is your opinion on protein and how many grams of protein women over 40 should have a day?
Yes, I love protein. I think it goes with kind of the nutrient density thing, like your avocado example. I love that as well. If you think about eating a whole avocado, which is between 200 and 300 calories, or that much of a sugary soft drink, which one are you going to feel better with? You're going to feel so much more satisfied long term on the avocado than something that's made up of sugar and simple carbohydrates. And protein is very much in that same category. Protein is very satiating. It's a complex molecule. It takes a long time for our bodies to break it down and get it into the cells and use it. So it sticks with us for a long time. So I'm very much an advocate of having protein and or healthy fat with every meal and snack. And I don't think that means we need to be chugging protein shakes all day long. We can certainly get that mostly from foods. The average woman around midlife, somewhere around a gram of, the technical advice is a gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. And to find out your kilograms, you divide your body in pounds by 2.2. So for that's somewhere between 65 to 100 grams of protein a day is where that usually works out to be. And if you think about that in terms of dividing it up throughout the day, one egg has 7 grams of protein. So if you do 2 eggs in the morning, you've got 14. If you put 3 ounces of grilled chicken breast on your salad, you get 21. If you have a high omega-3 rich piece of salmon for dinner, that's 5 ounces. That's 35 grams of protein. So it's a gram per ounce. So we can certainly get there to that 65 to 100 general target range. Everybody's different, but somewhere in that range through high quality foods.
But you're absolutely right. I always counsel my clients to try to get as close to 30 grams of protein per meal per day. And you're right. That doesn't mean that every single 3 times a day that you do protein powder. I do supplement with protein powder to make sure, but I don't do it 3 times a day because it's still processed. And so I have to be careful with that. But the other thing that's very interesting, you mentioned chicken. A lot of people think that they're doing a really great job of having skinless chicken breast. And that's really good for you. And it is, but you have to make sure you pair it with a healthy fat so that the protein and everything it's doing for your body can be fully absorbed. So you will not burn in hell if you keep the chicken skin on. It just depends on how you prepare it. I'm not advocating fried chicken necessarily, although that's my 20%er. Once a month, used to want to go crazy and go to my favorite grocery store that has the best chicken ever, except for my grandma's, of course. But yeah, there's a lot of myths out there in terms of what you should or should not do. And what we started talking about that earlier. What are some of the ones that you feel my audience needs to know? Some of the myths that maybe they may be doing that they were taught back in the 70s or 80s that maybe is not necessarily true.
I think building on what you just said, fat. So I think fat is really important. It has a lot to do with our hormone regulation and maintenance, our cell membrane maintenance. Being afraid of fat is something that I like to help people unlearn because back when I was in school as well, it was fat-free craze was everything.
Yeah, it was everything. Have you heard about the direct correlation between non-fat eating and Alzheimer's?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, there's some studies that have come out now because now it's been a good 30 years that people have been eating like that, and a lot of us now are getting older. They have seen a correlation between that. And it's interesting because I know someone personally who came from a non-fat school, and she's in her late 70s now, or maybe she might be in her early 80s now. But back in the day when she was growing up, when she was a young adult, it was no fat in anything, no fat at all. And as she got older, she began to look more and more frail. And she worked out and did all that. I said, why is it? And it was because of the lack of fat. And here's another myth that I want to dispel, and that is that butter is bad for you and you should get margarine. I didn't want to think about what's in margarine. They came up with that. But actually, butter can be good for you. Of course, all things in moderation. And if you're a vegan, I know, whatever, I'm not, okay, besides that. But what are your thoughts about that?
Yes, I'm in favor of fat. So I'm not anti-butter by any means. I would advise like going for the grass-fed organic butter, getting the best butter. And I think that's the easier place to buy organic too, is something that it might be like $6 versus $3, but we're going to have that butter for a long time. So that's a good place to go organic. I like to go organic with meats and with dairy, especially because of the hormones and things that can be added to those when they're being raised. But that's off track a little bit. Back to the fats. The fat-free thing, definitely something that I'm still trying to work to undo. It was really hammered into us for a few decades there, and it's just not beneficial. Like a lot of times when we remove fat from something that's naturally there, we add in something that's even less healthy, like reduced fat peanut butter. We're adding in sugars and artificial sugars and flavors. No, just have the peanuts themselves. Nature made it that way. So I'm definitely in favor of consuming good quality fats with your meals. It also helps, you mentioned, helps to absorb the protein. It helps to absorb vitamins and minerals from vegetables. So do not use fat-free salad dressing. Use a good quality oil and vinegar and flavors on your salads to absorb those.
That's my girl. You're my girl there because I only use olive oil and I do use different balsamic vinaigrettes, but I usually try to buy locally the balsamic vinaigrettes that are organic and local. If you can do the farmers market and organic foods, that's really great to be able to begin to add to your diet. Not only are you supporting your local economy, but you're also supporting your body by eating organically rich foods. And it's interesting because organic foods do last so much longer and taste different as well. Back in the day, I used to think that 20-something years ago, before I started doing what I'm doing now, that what is the point of organic? As long as you wash it, it doesn't matter. But please understand that the pesticides and things that they use permeate through the skin to the meat of the fruit or the vegetable. So you really are still eating it. I don't care how many times you wash it with a brush or whatever people do, it still is going to have the thing that you're trying to avoid in the meat of the fruit or the vegetable. So eating organic, and you're absolutely right. Let's talk a little bit real quickly about the whole idea with organic meats and organic chicken and what that's all about. Could you explain that to our audience?
Yes, it makes such a big difference what we as humans eat. It makes a big difference the the meats and things that we eat. It makes a big difference what their diet is as well. So when it's an organic product, there's standards on what diet the hens are fed for the eggs, the cows are fed. We don't want them eating a bunch of like the scraps essentially, because that's then what we are.
It absolutely, and not to be gross or anything, but that's the truth. That really
It is the truth.
And thank you, Julie, so much for bringing the truth here today. There's some things that I think people know and other things that they're not quite sure about. So talking with a nutritionist that really has the skinny on what we should and should not be eating is really important. And I have, as I said earlier, her link there on the show page. Go ahead and take a look at the Go Coco app. It has 1 million users nationwide, and especially is great for people who are diabetics and trying to, hopefully, if you're type 2, you're making lifestyle changes to not be type 2. That's one of my pet peeves as well. Type 2 diabetics don't have to be type 2. You don't have to die from being a type 2 diabetic. There are things that you can do, and her app is a start. Julie, thank you so much for being here on the V.I.B.E Living Podcast. It's been great having you here today.
Thank you so much. I love chatting with you.
And thank you to all of you for being here. I hope you got some information that was value added. You know that I believe that all women over 40 should be able to vibe, be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. If you like this podcast, please don't forget to comment and share with people you care about. And also take a look at the over 150 other podcasts that we have, all from premier experts, just like Julie, who've come here to share their expertise with you. Thanks so much for listening. Have a fantastic day. And don't forget to vibe, everybody. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the V.I.B.E Living Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and share this podcast. Have a fantastic day, and don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody.